This is the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neimann. If you're looking to generate wealth and passive income in the lucrative world of mobile home parks, you're in the right place. You'll discover solutions to the common legal and operational pitfalls and how to optimize parks to maximize income. Your host is in the trenches. He's a real estate attorney, financial analyst, and mobile home park investor and operator. Now, let's turn it over to Ferd Neimann.
Welcome back, Mobile Home Park Nation. Ferd Neimann here again today with another episode of the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast. Today, we've got another in our series of kind of mini panels talking about a number of topics important to the industry. Today's topic is going to be on growing pains. I've got two other guys with me who are going through some of the same problems and pains that I've had to go through with my business as you go from one to two to several parks. We may have another guest join us here. We got a little bit of a delay on getting started, but we'll have three of us, maybe four later on. But first, I want to welcome my guests. First, I got Larry Abramowitz and then also Brett Bowman. Hey, guys, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks.
You got it. Well, I know both of you guys pretty well. Some of our audience will for sure as well, but maybe tell us a little bit more as an intro. Maybe start with Larry as far as, where are you? I know you're in Florida, so you're investing elsewhere. So how that, where you invest and how you got started and how it's gone so far, just high level, and then we'll let Brett go, and then we'll dive into some discussion topics.
Yeah, I'll go up pretty high level, but I've been doing real estate probably since 2014. And done mostly buying foreclosures here in I'm living in Miami, Florida, and I was doing buying a lot of foreclosures off the court, homes, apartments, land, office, resident, retail, whatever I could find that had value in it. I was, when I could get it, I was buying it. Then that dried up. Started doing multifamily syndication, and the returns were getting tighter. So somebody introduced me to this asset class. I went to the Frank's class, and it took me. I did study it for about a year before I did my first deal, and started my first deal was July of last year. Bought a park, big infill project in Wichita. It only had 20% occupancy. That was my first deal in July of last year, and then bought the second deal in November in Peoria, Illinois, and that was another big infill project with a lot of headaches. And then I bought another park about the same in Wichita again in that was in June of this year, and I just closed the last deal near in Winfield, which is an hour from Wichita. About was it 3 weeks ago? So I have 4 parks right now, and that's kind of where I'm at. In the business, about 400, close to 400 lots in about a year and 4 months.
Now, one thing that's kind of distinct about you too, Larry, is we'll talk about growing pains. Is some of your growing pains is you're start off as a one-man band. Others growing pains are you got investors and other partners here and co-partners here, kind of pros and cons of each. But you've been doing the heavy lifting from remote with some on-site help. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, all these parks I did on my own, I didn't syndicate, I did all my capital, and basically just dug into the business to learn it from the bottom up, just doing everything, and as just building a team as I go along and as the business grows. But yeah, it's been challenging, definitely. Buying and managing, I self-manage also, so that's learning the management part of it and running the parks and buying them. I've been doing it all.
So you don't have as much gray hair as me, so you must be doing something right. What about you, Brett? Tell us a little more about your guys' company. I know Ryan too works with you, and you guys got a good team you're building. And but tell us a little bit more about your background. And I know you got a day job too, so you be able to balance both of them with a partner and get it done.
Sure. Yeah. So I, somewhat similar to Larry, but different track. I got involved in real estate investing a few years ago. Started with single family homes with the BRRRR strategy. Buy, rehab, refinance, rent, repeat, all in there. I think I switched a couple hours, but from there I got involved in multifamily and industrial syndications and started doing mobile homes a little over a year ago. For me personally, Ryan Hill, my business partner, has been doing it a little over 2 years. So I like the mobile home park industry for a number of reasons that I'm sure we'll jump into, but that's been pretty fantastic. So Ryan and I have a company called Suncrest Capital, and over the last just over a year, so October 6th, 2020 was my first mobile home park. So we just celebrated our year anniversary of mobile home parks, and we now have 12 with over 600 lots. So it's been a wild ride in 12 months, and both of us have full-time jobs. So it's been interesting to learn the scale side of it and force ourselves to scale without using our own time. So I think we'll talk a little bit more about the unique growing pains with that too.
Right, absolutely. And then, yeah, so I mean, I'm a little bit more, a couple more years than you guys in it, but definitely still going through the growing pains. We've sold a few, so we're around 1,000 pads, but we had about 1,200, and then we're in 5 states and got about 15 different parks. So a lot of smaller parks, 20s, 40s, 60s, a couple of them over 100. Got about 180. No, actually more than that. I got about 300 under contract. But one of them we're still waiting on some reports, but growing pains here as well. So today I'm half host, half participant with you guys. So appreciate you guys taking the time, helping educate others with me. So one thing I want to ask right out of the gate is, what did you think would be easy? And it really isn't. Was it, collections, we heard about it, or, I learned at the boot camp, it's 4 hours a week, you can manage a park, and not my parks. And part of that is obviously going to depend on particular park location, et cetera. But maybe, Larry, if you want to go first, maybe tell us something that you thought would be easy that really has been anything but.
Thought it'll be a lot easier to sell homes when I bought these big infill projects, given the affordability of homes, or what I would say used to be more affordable, because now prices have gone up. So that's been the biggest challenge. When I started underwriting these deals, I was getting quotes from manufacturers and the prices were in the low 30s, and now you can get a home for close to 50. It's kind of the cheapest home out there on a single wide. So that has been a challenge, because now the prices are getting pretty steep. And when they finance them, even with the 21st program, I mean, now they're not as affordable when you're trying to raise lot rents and add the financing costs, insurance, and taxes. I mean, now they're paying, much more than or about the same they'll pay for an apartment or maybe a rental home in the area, even though two of my parks are pretty, I would say, high end or higher median income and higher median home price. Still, it's tough. I brought in some double wides, and by the time you set him up and get him out there and you add the financing, people are going to be paying about $1,200 a month for a double wide. And it's a tough sale, because at the end of the day, people still say it's a mobile home park. And they'd rather live in a house, in a stick-built home, than in a mobile home park if they can. So once the prices start going up, selling homes has been definitely a challenge. That's kind of where we've been having issues moving homes. And I did go in very aggressive. I got my dealer's license and worked with the manufacturers and started buying. My goal was to kind of infill the park in a couple of years, and I put the orders in for the first year, and sales slowed down. So we've had, I had to push back actually the manufacturers, on shipping the homes to the parks, because they're not selling as quick as I hope. The first homes that were lower cost, they did sell pretty quick. Now with the higher prices, it's getting harder to sell.
No doubt. That's definitely been a struggle this year, and it's frustrating, because it's like, what can we do? The cost of labor is going up, the cost of supplies are going up, timelines are going up. Our consumer wages are not going up at the same pace. So it's, the affordability was one of the key sticking points to get somebody in the door. It was, hey, look, I can get you all in house for $850 a month, and lot rent, home tax, insurance, trash is included. It's going to be great. Apartments 300-400 higher, but that margins, apartments are going up, but mobile home parks, because of the manufacturer price, have also, for infill, have gone up substantially. So you're not alone, I'm sure. We're feeling it. Everybody feels it with that. You can't just push the price 25%. Especially what problem I had on a couple of them was, I told somebody, hey, I'll sell you this house for $50,000, and then I order it. 3 months later, it shows up, and then the manufacturer's like, oh, hey, we had to up the price to $8,000. I can't go back to consumer and say, hey, I need another $8,000. They're going to think I'm pulling a fast one on them. I'm like, Am I just going to eat the $8,000? That's, how many times can you afford to do that? That's a substantial amount of pain, especially as you have to infill, tens and tens of lots. So definitely a practical problem. On our more recent deals, we've been underwriting. They call it an eat, or eat 5,000 a house or eat 8,000 a house. And then we put it in the capital raise, but that's not any fun either. But at least it's part of the project plan. And if prices go back down, well, the cherry on top, but we budgeted in some of that pain. Brett, what about you? You got any comment on that or other things that you thought would be easier?
I almost laugh when I get asked this question because I am so shocked at how, what ended up being hard for me. So the two big things, and both of these I think come up to having the right organization and processes in place. But the first is bills. And Ferd's actually our attorney for a lot of transactions. So I was already joking with him over email with his own invoice, but just the number of bills you get is just crazy to me. So we have, just for example, one of our 90 lot parks, about 8 or 9 units are RVs, and each one has its own RV bill, or I'm sorry, electric bill. So then we've got water bill, sewer bill, electric times 10, and then any of the contractors, all of our projects, as I mentioned before, we're big fans of the BRRRR strategy, right? So we're buying stuff that's distressed. So we've got a lot of CapEx we're doing. So we've got lots of contractors. And so keeping track of all the different bills of all the different contractors, making sure it's been approved, that whole process, and then also making sure it gets paid. And then we're tracking the 1099 information. Bills are a bit of a headache. The second category, I would say, not even including home sales, I would just say homes are a challenge for us. So we've bought 20 used homes in the last 3 months. And most of those are sitting in park still, that we're still paying lot rent as we're waiting for them to get moved, because we don't have movers that can move them fast enough. And then on top of that, you're tracking bills of sale, you're tracking titles, you're tracking payments, again, back to the bills, you're tracking the payments to them on these homes. You've got to have somebody go out and check it out and inspect it. So just there's this whole process to homes. And that's all to get them in your park, not even selling them. So I had no idea either one of those would be such headaches when I got into this.
Larry, this sounds like many of our prior conversations where we're like, man, the homes are a huge pain. This is not the real estate business, it's the operations business. And Brett just described a lot of the operations. I know from invoicing, it's pretty easy. I think you pay the legal bill first, and if the rest of them don't get paid, it's not that big. It's not that big a deal. So that's
if you can figure out your bill, Ferd.
That's my attitude. Yeah, we're going through a new invoicing system because it is a pain.
I agree with Brett on the invoices. That's my next project. Is I just signed up with Avid Exchange that works with Rent Manager, and that's basically to automate the invoicing and the payments, because it's taking a lot of my time scanning. I mean, I get all the email in the office, you got to scan those invoices. I send them I have a person that's doing all my accounting, so I just send it to them. They put them in the system, and they got to be entered in the right GL account, otherwise the expense is in the wrong place, which happens about 50% of the time. And and then you got to check your financials and make sure that all those bills are in the right place. You got to pay them on time. So yeah, that takes a long time and a lot of time out of my day. So my next project is to automate that, and I sign up with. There's a bunch of these other companies that automate accounts payable, but that's one that works with Rent Manager, and I just sign up for them. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's going to help me a lot to just make my life easier.
Yeah, I'll say the biggest step we took in that direction, we use Buildium, and Buildium, when you're setting up the ePay for residents to pay you with either ACH or credit, you sort of for free get the ACH ability to pay out bills. But as far as checks go, you have to get that. That's a different process to set it up. And I hesitated for a long time to get the check processing set up because it seemed like such a headache, but it ended up being the easiest thing to just turn on the check on Buildium. And most of the contractors want checks, ironically. That I have no idea why that's the case in 2021, almost 2022, but that's the case. And so that saves me a time just because I can put it into Buildium and send it out, and then it's automatically on my general ledger because it's all done in the same place. So that helps, but we're still figuring it out,
Yeah, Brett, I agree with you. I mean, Rent Manager we use Rent Manager instead of Building, but they have the ability to print checks, and it seems to make it a lot easier, print checks rather than ACH or EFT on a lot of stuff. And then
Yeah.
it was harder as far as at the beginning, just tracking all of the information, tracking all the financial stuff. And then ultimately we're now doing more e-pay and converting all the residents to e-pay. That's helps a ton. But uh, something I thought would be easier, it would be monitoring all the financials and the P&Ls and all that kind of stuff. I have an accounting degree and finance degree, and like we know the stuff, but the amount of entry and the amount of things that can go wrong is definitely a pain. And we syndicated some of our deals, so you got to get that stuff just perfect before you can get out the door. So that's a problem that maybe you and I have that Larry doesn't as much as you're not syndicating these deals, but definitely accounting bookkeeping is robust in this business. I want to introduce our fourth attendee here, ghost from the past. He's here, Abraham Anderson. Abraham, how you doing, man?
Doing great, Ferd. Happy to be here. Sorry I'm late. I misread the time zone, so I screwed that up.
Oh, no worries, no worries. Well, we got Larry Abramowitz here and Brett Bowman. We're just talking about growing pains. Time zone challenges are one of those growing pains. Anyway, Abraham, maybe give yourself a quick introduction. I know you, but something for maybe some of our audience.
Sure.
Say hi, tell us
Yeah,
about your portfolio, and then we were just talking about some of the things that we thought would be easy when we got in the business that are not easy, and then
Sure.
we'll get into some of the. I know your portfolio is more local than these guys to where you live, so that may be a different challenge. But
Sure.
we'll get into some of that as well.
Sure. So, yeah, my name's Abraham. I live in East Tennessee. We currently have just under 1,300 lots across about 25 parks. Most of them are in Tennessee. We've got one park in West Virginia, and we've got a couple parks as far as Montana, but most are within about a 3-hour driving distance. As far as things that have been harder than anticipated, I would say management of, once you start getting into double-digit parks, it does become a lot trickier, especially if you've got some smaller parks that can't afford, an on-site manager. Having somebody to run those, that can be kind of tricky. So the growing pains of that is, as of November 1st, I'm hiring a district manager full-time to kind of oversee some of the smaller properties and also manage the other managers that I've been doing up until now, and that's taken a lot of my time. So I'd like to offload that in order to focus on finding other properties.
No, good comment there. I mean, one thing I'm with you. We hired recently a regional manager she's been great. Came from another mobile home park operator, but the con of that is obviously there's an expense. The pro of that is you've got another set of eyes and ears. You've got another person's experience, and you can then delegate, outsource, et cetera. So that is a growing pain. You hire the first employee. The first employees, I think, is the biggest like bullet to bite. Like, man, I got to hire somebody, and then I got responsible for another family, and then you hire a second, a third, and then each one I feel like is a continual cost benefit analysis of, does it make sense to hire this person? And as you point out, small parks are hard. I'm under contract on a 38 park pad park in Illinois, and the lot rents are $175. It's just doesn't have enough gross revenue to pay for a full-time manager. But luckily it's 45 minutes away from where I have another manager, and I have 100 pads. So that person can cover some of those duties. And then from a headquarters, we can cover some of the marketing or cover some of the accounting. So there are some economies of scale that solve some of those growing pains for sure. Maybe for Brett and Larry, and then circle back with Abraham. What are, in general, we talked a little bit about park-owned homes being a challenge. We talked about accounting invoices being a challenge. What are some other things that are the hardest part about operations? And then maybe after that, we'll go into the hard part of finding projects, which is continually tougher in this environment. But maybe other operational challenges that have been hard. If you've got a solution, like we just kind of, Abraham and I mentioned, maybe the scale, hiring staff. If you have a solution to that, love to hear that as well.
Yeah, so we kind of, as I mentioned in the beginning, because Ryan and I both work full time, we started with staff earlier than I think a lot of other people would. So we already, like, one of our first hires was a regional manager, and she oversees all of our community managers. And then we also have a regional project manager. Both of them are technically 1099s. So we're just now getting in the phase where we're hiring our first 3 W-2 employees all this month. So What we've learned though from all of that, I think the hardest challenge is consistency. And maybe that's not the right summary, but essentially my explanation would be, we frequently in my head, what I think is the most important person for one person, that's the most important task or objective for someone, isn't necessarily what they're doing. And so it's not necessarily translating very well. And so we're like seeing small balls get dropped frequently, that is just not, and I can't be there for all of it. So that's been challenging. So what we've done recently actually is just really gone back to the drawing board, and we have a big spreadsheet that's every single person in the organization, and then one of the column next to them is what is their number one task, like the number one goal. So for example, our regional property manager, we told her number one task is increasing NOI. That's number one. If anything else that we've asked her to do isn't in line with that, she needs to push back to us on that. And then we said, here are the things we expect daily, weekly, monthly, and irregularly of each person, so that everybody sees what everybody's supposed to be working on. So that's been helping already with some of the roles and responsibilities and accountability. Just, one of those basic things of just alignment.
That's great. That reminds me, if I'll jump in real quick, that reminds me of, we do a lot of weekly planning, rapid planning method, and then a lot of daily planning. And that's when I had especially laborers in the field, I learned early on, they're good at some things and there's some things they're not. And so I learned one of the things they're not good at is triage or planning. They'll triage in the wrong order. They'll be in the middle of fixing a water line. They'll walk to the truck to get a part. On the way back, somebody says, hey, my toilet's leaking. Then they go fix the toilet. And then, oh, by the way, the toilet's broken. Then they go to Home Depot. They get a new toilet. They come back, they install the toilet. I get to the end of the day and they're like, oh, I couldn't finish the water line. It's still leaking because I got distracted on the toilet. So I really learned have the manager supervise people that are not good at planning. And part of that is planning capital projects and infill projects. And it's not a micromanagement as much as it's a focusing, kind of like you're saying. I like that on your org chart that you got the number one task. That's a focus on your task. Gary Keller's book, The One Thing. Like if you're not doing the one thing, you're not doing things in the right order, you're just busy. And being busy is not the same as being productive. So I like that. It's a good tip, Brett. What about you, Larry? What's some other operational things that have been hard that you're finding solutions to?
And the hardest, of course, has been managing remotely. The beginning, I was going almost once a month to the parks and staying a week in each park. So I've been traveling a lot. What I've been doing is scaling up in the same area so I can have the same manager kind of oversee the parks in the area and hire, I would say, a higher level managers, and not so much what you hear in the cores where you got to pay them $10 a lot. I mean, you really don't get much for that. I mean, I think that what you really have to do is hire a manager with skill that you're going to have to pay the person enough to to have somebody with a good level, and then just keep on buying parts maybe around the area to scale up and have that person manage more more units, and also be able to afford a maintenance person, because that's kind of been the biggest challenge, is finding people to fix stuff. I mean, you can either have a manager or a maintenance, but usually one person, I mean, it's hard to find that person that can do both really well. So I think that what's been helping me now, in Wichita now I have a maintenance person and a manager, and that's really been helping me to scale and to do things a lot quicker, is just have somebody that can deal with the day-to-day of maintenance and fixing things. And the other biggest challenge has been remodeling used homes. I've been buying a lot of used homes when they're available, just to infill. And sometimes they sit in the park for months until I can find somebody that will fix them, that knows what they're doing, and they can fix them at I would say, a reasonable price. Like, they've been getting crazy quotes. So what we started doing is posting, in jobs in Spanish in Facebook, just to, look at the local Latin groups and just posting in there to find handymans and stuff. But they're also, I posted a job at 15 an hour, and everybody started putting the laughing faces on the, making a joke out of my post, because they say, for that, you're not going to get anybody. I mean, if you want to get someone in maintenance, you got to pay 25 an hour. So that's been, it's definitely something you got to underwrite for, is a higher labor expense, especially for maintenance.
Good point. Abraham, you want to tackle that as well? I know some of these challenges we're probably all having in all markets, but curious too on the labor market in Tennessee is how's it compared to some of the other places? You're a little further south.
Sure. And that's exactly what I was going to mention was labor shortage. And I'm sure this isn't similar in a lot of different areas, but you drive up and down the main drags and metros in Tennessee, everything is for, for hiring. We're hiring, apply within. That has been the number one challenge, is just finding good contractors, whether it's handymen or more capital projects, home movers, even paving, or surveys. Any type of contractor. It's just almost impossible right now. And what we've done is the ones we have that are good, we try to always keep them busy, just so they're not, going and taking on some big project for somebody else. Like if they're not employees of ours, I'm just trying to always send them work. And then, I pay them quickly. I want to pay them right when they invoice me on it so that they're happy with me and they're not frustrated. So that's one thing that I've tried to do. But it's that has definitely been the number one challenge for us right now, is just finding people to show up that are licensed, insured, and that know what they're doing.
We're having the same problems, and I think that's more macroeconomic. I don't know the answer to a quick solution on that. But I'll tell you one thing we learned a couple of years back, to your point on keeping guys busy. I had this guy, Marty. He worked for me for 2 years, and he'd work overtime. He'd work Saturdays. He'd work 50, 55 hours a week. But then sometimes we'd run out of homes. And we'd like, hey, I got another home, but it's 3 weeks out. So he'd say, okay. Well, then he'd go do a roofing job or something for somebody else. And then I'd have a, frozen pipe or a gas leak or something like that. And we'd call him. He'd say, I can't help for 3 days. I'm on a roofing job. So we're like, then I got to hire a regular plumber at $150. And I was paying this guy $16 an hour. So I learned that same thing of keep him busy. So what we did, we said, hey, you're only allowed to work 40 hours a week, except if we give you other permission. And then you can do other jobs, maintenance jobs, or people fix a bathroom for somebody on nights and weekends. And that will be kept you busy. And if we ever ran out of work for them, we saw it coming, we called the other park owner and say, look, I'm going to send that. You got any park owned homes remodel? And of course they did. And we'd say, hey, we'll send you this guy for 2 weeks. You just pay him direct, but you got to promise not to poach him. And we found a couple of guys who were cool about that. And we would do that. We'd lend them out. But then we got worried about that. So we started buying. We had some duplexes, and my parents had a farm and stuff. We started like, hey, we're slow, or it's a rainy week, go paint the inside of the barn. We always had on a farm, you always got capital projects like that too, that you just push and push. So we kept them busy for 5 or 6 or 7 years. And now I try to keep full-time guys busy. I can't do it in every market we're in, but in the markets where we got, substantial amount of park-owned homes, I try to keep a full-time maintenance guy busy with remodel, CapEx, or relooking. Like yesterday, I have 4 guys in Marshall, Missouri. We bought a park that we're sub-metering it. None of these guys, 2 are from Illinois and 2 are from Kansas City. And hey, you guys are going to spend 4 days doing 4 guys sub-meter and replacing these lines and doing some other miscellaneous work. And then when they get back home, there's pent up demand for them. We got other projects because they haven't been there for 4 days. But we knocked out a big project at 25% of the cost of hiring. We use Metron meters and we like their meters, and we use their water scope, but their plumbers are a lot more expensive than my plumbers, and they're not any better. So any other comments on ops? Any guys right now, or you want to talk about harder things on finding deals? We talked about hiring people already, so I kind of skipped through that. But what are you guys doing to try to find new projects or anything just in general, whether it's find new projects or staffing or bookkeeping? What's keeping you up at night besides the neighbor's dog, if anything? Whoever wants to go first, go for it.
Sure. One thing that I've learned, every time I miss out on a deal, those, it's funny. Of all the deals I've done, the ones that come to mind are always the ones I missed out on. You might do 3 great deals, but you missed out on that good one, and it just, that keeps me up. So one big thing that I've taken away, and unfortunately, I really saw this play out twice, almost simultaneously with different sellers, is if there's a park that you're talking to a guy and they tell you a number, if it's even within the realm of being able to do it, just, okay, sure, I'll give you that. Write it up, get it under contract. There's 2 deals I lost out on very big properties where we were off by like 15%, and I was trying to haggle them that last, small amount relative, and someone else came along and gave them the same amount. And what's the most frustrating is you may even have a situation where they agree to the higher amount, they write it up, and then they come back and retrade them back to what you offered initially. So, and you're not, obviously, if you get it under contract, you're not, you still have the ability if things come up to renegotiate if it's justified. But that's been one thing. I mean, if you're in the running and they throw out a number, just go ahead and say, okay, let's write it up. We'll do it. As far as other ways to finding properties in general, it's taken me, sometimes it'd be 2 to 3 years of me following up with the seller before they actually end up selling. So pick a market you want to be in, make a list of all the parks, and just call up the owners, call them up, introduce yourself, tell them what you do, talk to them, make notes, and then just be consistent. Call back, whether it's every month or, every couple months. You have to keep your name fresh in their mind. And one thing I've done, another thing recently, this is the last point I'll make, that's helped a lot. I've got 2 deals recently because of this, was sometimes, these sellers are kind of on the fence. Oh, I'm thinking about selling, I'm not sure. And this could be something they tell you for a year. Finally, I've said, what price would it be at if you got it, you just couldn't say no to? What would it take for you to sell it? And I'm surprised they just said, well, okay, if I had this amount, I would sell. And it might be a little bit more than you want to pay, but I've gotten 2 deals like that recently just from posing that question to them. So that's just, those are a couple things I've learned recently to try in order to get a park.
Good tips. Larry, what about you? What do you find in the market that's hard to find a reasonable deal?
Well, actually, right now I kind of stopped looking because I'm trying to organize what I have. But I've gotten a lot of my deals like through wholesalers. I guess all of them I got in through wholesalers. I'm not doing direct to owner contacts, or I haven't started doing that, which eventually I will. But right now I don't have the team to do that. So I pretty much am relying either on looking at broker deals, which have been hard to justify. I mean, some of these deals out there through the brokers, and then most of the stuff I've put under contract has been with the wholesalers. And I'll agree with Abraham that even those deals, when they come in, and even if the number seems a little high, once you start doing due diligence and you start finding the real problems with the deal, and what are the real rents, not what they reported, and what's the reality when the seller, most of the times they don't even know what they have, right? I mean, a lot of these mom and pops to have everything in a notebook or notes, and it's, when you put it all together, you start finding out that it's not as, it's not what was presented at the beginning, and then you can sit down with them and try to negotiate. And I mean, when it makes sense, I say negotiate it. Sometimes it just, what I've learned in the last deal is that sometimes even if the seller will not come down, even when you find issues, if the deal still makes sense, I mean, don't walk away, because I've had instances where they don't want to go down, let's say 30,000 for the sewer lines, and the reality is in the last deal, yeah, they had issues, but they're still operational, and it's not, maybe I didn't have to come out of pocket right away, and the seller would not give me a penny, but the numbers still made sense. So I say, okay, let's close it, let's just get it done. And she didn't come down a single penny on the deal, but I agree with Abraham. You can't get too greedy sometimes. If the deal works and the numbers still work, just get it. It's never going to be perfect.
Tips. Brett, you got any comments to add on that?
I've had similar experiences there. I would say I think a lot of times we as a whole and investor groups get hung up on cap rates, and cap rates are important. But I think similar to what Larry and Abraham were saying, if the value's there and you're paying a tiny bit more and the cap rate isn't what you want, but you've got a nice return anyway, like a lot of the approach I'll do when I'm doing underwriting is I get to where I feel comfortable as far as my infill and my upside and everything that I can get in there. And then I try to bump my purchase price as high as I can possibly get. And then if I'm still way low, I'll still send in an offer, because I know I'm not going to feel bad that I lost out on that deal in that case. And I'm looking at my board right now. I've got lists of those that I've missed out on that I've felt just fine about. But the ones where you're close, those can hurt. So you want to do your best to really zero in on your underwriting and make sure you're doing the right thing. I will say the other thing we've done, and this was sort of in your cheat sheet of questions that I'm kind of segueing here. We've locked ourselves in geographically into the Midwest for a couple of reasons. The main one is we started in Kansas City, and that's where our regional team is all based out of. So we've got our regional director and our regional project director both in Kansas City, and then we have a rehab crew of 5 people that are also based there. So if we're buying parks within a 3.5 hour radius, I sleep a lot better at night because I know I've got a team of people that can get there a lot faster than I can. And then the community managers we have on site are really high quality people as well. So I still look at things that are outside of that radius because they're exciting and interesting, but it has to be a killer deal for me to get out of that area.
No, I think we all agree. I mean, Larry mentioned he's purposely been clustering geographically several parks in the Wichita area. I know Abraham's portfolio is largely in Tennessee. We're in 5 states, but that's really not that far away based on drive time. And I agree with that. And for sure, I look at deals. The things I don't like, is the struggles I'm having looking at deals right now are going to be deals that are brokered, are often really price competitive. And some of the call for offers, you got to bigger portfolios, you got to put a ton of time into them to properly underwrite them, because you got to bring your A+ value if you're going to get the deal bought. And I've done it on several deals, and I've been off by half of what they sold for. I'm just like, what does this other guy know that I don't know? But because I think I can't operate it profitably at that rate, or not for a yield that makes me want to work an extra hour today. So that's been a challenge. The other challenge we've had buying deals right now is I've looked at 2 really good deals in markets that I really like. The price looked fair, but the guys have like 40% leverage in place, and they got a real stiff prepayment, yield maintenance or defeasance penalty with their lender. So I'm like, one deal's $9 million deal. I was like, great. Well, the penalty is like $895,000 because they got such a low loan and bad loan on. I was like, well, and they go, but you can just assume it. I'm like, well, I can only, if I assume it, I got low leverage. I got to go to one bank. I got to try to get a supplemental, and there's a process to that. That's a pain. I go, or I got to get a new loan at a better interest rate, but then I got to pay this fee. It's not $9 million anymore. And so I've had 2 different deals. One was like $4 million, one was like $9 million, that I otherwise was like, as Abraham said, I was close. And I'm like, okay, the price is somewhat reasonable, but when you add that on, I'm like, well, it's not as reasonable. And it was more painful. So that's been a struggle for me. What about some stuff that's going right? I mean, we're talking here about growing pains, but before we end the conversation on things that go wrong, obviously we've all bought more than one. So we're either crazy or we're doing it again because something's going right. We keep doing it.
Or
so,
both.
Go ahead.
We're both crazy and doing something right.
Yeah, that's probably too. But what's been easier than you expected? I know it's not renovating park-owned homes, and I know it's not getting your new homes on order at reduced prices. But what else has gone easier than expected that's made this kind of fun and then made your life easier?
For me, and I need to knock on wood. Collections has actually been much easier than I expected, and that goes from the logistics. Every park we've bought, people were paying cash or checks. Then we've got 12 communities now, and every single one, people were used to paying with cash. And so we made a hard stand that we need to do e-pay or checks. We do allow checks, and part of that, I heard early on, you need to use one bank for all of your operating accounts, and I preach that. Like, we have everything with Chase Bank. And it is so easy because I can transfer stuff. I can see it all in one place. It's fantastic. And the permissions are fantastic too. There's really granular permissions. So every one of my park managers can make mobile deposits. They can't see a single thing. Their only access is mobile deposit. So they can do mobile deposits. We've got e-pay, all that kind of stuff. And again, the other thing that I've learned from, all of our parks have had this situation where they've had very lax late fees and payment policies. And we've come in day one, our very strict policy, very well spelled out, and we enforced it, and our collections are way better than I ever would have expected. We still have to, obviously we've got some issues and people were evicting, but not nearly to the scale I would have thought.
I would say that for us also, it's been a lot easier. It's been implementing the pay lease, or we pretty much come in on every deal. I've come in and said day one, we only take payments through, we use Rent Manager and Pay Lease, and we give them the options to either pay, there's Walmart or whatever local store that Pay Lease accepts. They can pay cash there, or they can pay with an ACH, online, or with a credit card, or a debit card. And that's pretty much the choices we give them. And it takes about a month to get everybody on board. Some people are slower and they don't, they have a flip phone, or, they say they didn't get the information. But the park we just bought last month, I think we have about 80% of the people already on board. And by then once you get that set up, then collections are pretty easy, unless the people they're not going to pay, they're never going to pay regardless. So those probably go to evictions. But yeah, I've seen a lot of the Facebook groups talk about that, and I pretty much rip the Band-Aid and just tell them that's the only way to go, and just makes my life much easier. And there's no stories, right? If they paid or if they didn't. People say they paid, and I said, listen, the system doesn't make a mistake. If they paid, we'll see it, and you'll see it right away. And if they didn't pay, you can just, the Rent Manager will not show the payment. So it's pretty easy to keep tabs on collections.
It's funny. This is the exact thing that I had written down, was taking cash pay or online payments through Paylease. So, different operators in different parts of the country, but we face the same problems and also the same, I guess, things that are easier than expected. But I have a couple associates that, between all the stuff we have, it may be close to 2,000 lots. And on every park that we're in, we implement that. You have to pay either at a Paylease location or online. In Paylease, they basically integrate with MoneyGram, so anywhere you can do a MoneyGram is where they can pay. And what I found is, a lot of these park owners, mom and pops, they do take cash. So with Paylease, they can go to Walmart or wherever and give them cash, and then they get a receipt and it goes in your bank account. But as Larry and Brett have touched on, that's been a huge help. To me, a big fear was always managers either getting robbed or, embezzling the rent. And so just completely taking them out of collections. If you have a bad manager, you can just get rid of them and get somebody else in there, and collections don't take a hit at all. So that has definitely been a big, something that's been easier for us. The other thing right now is been pretty easy is lending. And I think it's like people tell me in 2008, or 2010 especially, you could buy deals everywhere, but lending was really a challenge. Now we have the opposite, where finding deals is really hard, but if you're qualified, it's a lot easier to get a loan. The other day, the president of the bank that I do a lot of deals with reached out to me, and he met me for lunch, bought me lunch, and I could tell he's giving me this pitch why, hey, please keep your loans with us, keep giving us business. And I thought, man, that's interesting. At the beginning, you're kind of doing the opposite. You're trying to win them over and get their favor. But right now, lending is good, and you've got banks competing for your business. So those have been two things that have been easier compared to, harder challenges.
No, that's a good point, Abraham. I've noticed that too, where banks, and the bigger you get, the easier it gets too, as far as lending. You got a better track record. But I've noticed it even of late on refinances, where, even with Fannie Mae, people for years tell me, you need to have at least 2 years of seasoning, stable property, all this before you get to Fannie Mae. And I had a property that was a kind of a dog, fixed it up real fast, and I didn't want to be on the recourse that long. I didn't want to do a recourse refinance because it was kind of a 2-horse town. And I was like, I don't want to, if the industry goes out, I'm in trouble. I put it on Fannie Mae after 9 months, cash out, and now it's non-recourse. And since I did that, I relocated my manager, who was a star, put him in a different property, and he was the glue. So that property immediately took a big hit as far as collections and rule falling. And the next man, we've already gone through 4 or 5 managers in 5 months, where that guy was a rock star. Now I got him in a bigger park, overseeing 3 parks. So I realized, man, it's easy if you find the right people. It's hard if you don't. And this guy was in the park. I could tell within 5 minutes, that's going to be my future manager. And now he's overseeing, 150 pads for me in a different market. And he's doing great there. But the first park was 54. And as soon as he left, it's like you'd think it's 1,000 pads as hard as it is for the next manager. So it's easy to do good when you have good people, but it's definitely been hard otherwise. Well, guys, what about maybe last question? If you got any systems you've implemented or just any general advice you've implemented to make your lives better for something we haven't touched on, just for our audience. I mean, all of us have gone from, 0 to wherever we're at, and all of us are moving forward for more, either more infill or more parks or some combination. So any words of wisdom to share with our guests or our audience?
We have
Bring
a
up a
couple
list.
of
Go ahead, bro. Sorry.
sorry, Larry. We have a couple of tools we've used that have helped a ton. When it was just a couple of us at the beginning, it was really easy to do email and text and everything. But after a few months, you start looking back and you're like, okay, now where was that document, or who was it that said what? And so it's nice to know exactly where to go for everything. So we've landed on Trello and Slack, and then we integrate them together. And we have over 30 people on Slack because we've got every community managers on there. We've got some of our contractors are on there for like rehabs and stuff. And it's just nice to have this like trail of where we can go for information if we forget about something. And then if a card on Trello gets updated, we see it on Slack and vice versa. So it just kind of helps us keep those together. I've heard good things about Monday and other tools like that. But those are, I think just having the right tools that work for you helps a ton.
Yeah, we've been using for that as Asana for tracking everybody's tasks by park, and it's been great also because you can even it attaches to your email or your Outlook, or if you use Gmail, whatever it is, and you can actually right from the email assign a task to someone and kind of take it off your plate, and it will be in Asana with the email attachment. So all these, when you buy a park or managing a park, the to-do list is endless. And it's very easy to forget stuff or for somebody to forget stuff. So what I just do, we keep on adding everything in Asana with a task and a date and all the attachments that are necessary, and it helps us keep track of all these things. You can even do the chatting through there, but I think maybe adding Slack could be a good thing because we use WhatsApp right now and have all these chats all over the place. But all those conversations kind of get, as you buy more parks, it starts, it's too many chats going on. So that might be a good addition to maybe add this Slack in there for all that stuff. We're also using a CRM for home sales because we are selling a lot of homes right now. I mean, I have for sale a total of about 80 homes between all the parks. So we have a lot of leads, a lot of applicants, and everything to track. So that's definitely been something important for us, is to track all these home sales.
Larry,
so
what CRM do you use?
We're actually using one that's for the industry, which is called MHCRM.
Cool.
And it's kind of, I would say it's pretty easy. I was using someone that was helping me with the home sales, a consultant, and they recommended to use them, and it was kind of easy to implement and to use. So we're just, it's very visual. It's very easy to move and track people around in the stages. So we kind of just went on board and used that, and it's been very helpful. We have tablets that I buy a tablet with an internet connection, like a cell connection, and everybody that comes in to see a house, we have to give them the tablet and let them fill up their information. And as soon as it gets filled up, it already starts a mailing campaign. We have about 8 different emails, and one goes out like every week, as to see if we can bring him back in to close a sale, right? So that's kind of what. So that's been very helpful. And the other thing I've been playing around with, since I have remote parks, is I have 2 employees in Colombia right now, and I've been doing a lot of the management, I would say, remotely. Again, we're in a low rent business, right? So it's hard to justify high salaries. So that's been a way to keep my costs down, and still we're doing most of the collections remotely. A lot of the, taking over the park, sending out the leases, a lot of the back office, we've been doing it from there, and it's been working great. The only thing you can't do locally is a lot of the maintenance and that stuff. So I've been playing around by just having a maintenance person at the park, and then managing everything else remotely out of Colombia. And we're testing it now with the last purchase we did, and that's been so far it's been working out great. I mean, I think it might be a formula I might be using on the smaller deals that you can't justify full-time managers. So just testing different things. We're actually doing now in 2 parts, where we're doing all the violations and all the stuff remotely. We send it to the maintenance guy, let him post it. But a lot of these parks I'm buying are heavy value add, so I really need more than a manager. I need maintenance on site. So that's been very helpful for us.
Yeah, I also use Asana. It's great for tracking tasks and making sure things get done. And this piece of advice, I guess, would be whatever property management software you go with, just pull the trigger. And I try to do as much with that software as I can. So for instance, with Rent Manager, as we talked about, we do all the collections through it, all the accounting is through it. I'm in the process of switching all my phones over to it. So VoIP, where every time a tenant calls in, it records that call and saves it to their account. And don't skimp out on software. I used to hate the idea of paying for software, but it's really going to come back to bite you if you use a free version of some property management software, and it's not going to have the same capabilities, and you're just going to have to go and move everyone over later on. That's going to be a big expense and undertaking. So as far as just pull the trigger and don't try to save a penny. Hold the penny in front of your eye and miss the dollar.
Yeah, I agree.
Totally.
Well, those are good tips, good advice, guys. I'm the same way as you. We don't use Asana. I might check that out, but I've done a little bit of some of those programs. We use Teams a lot for stuff, and then I like to have a lot of written reports from my team and a lot of briefings remotely over Teams or Zoom, and then keeps me in the loop, and then also just the kind of geographic consolidation of one manager over, try to buy, if you got a full-time manager, try to buy something right near them. And if you got somebody there, try to tack a little bit more on, as opposed to get too spread out. I don't really want to be 15 hours from home having to look at properties, unless I got 5 of them right there, and then I can justify the occasional travel there. But definitely lots of growing pains in the business. It's a fun business, very active, as you guys all know as well as me. Lots going on. Any closing thoughts before we jump?
I have a few more tips that I wrote down a list because you sent us the questions. So
okay, go ahead.
So for people growing the business, you ask us what tips, or I would say to start slow so you can implement all the systems before you keep on buying parks. And I'm just things I learned from my mistakes, because I think I went too quick and now I'm trying to catch up, right? So ideally you have everything organized, and then then it's easier to buy. Make sure you have your accounting set up for somebody to do it, or it's not going to happen automatically. So and that's key. I mean, to make sure you do your books monthly on time, and make sure that how your properties are performing, and not be a surprise 3-4 months later. I guess one is understanding how difficult it is to infill, and the capex required for that, especially in hot states. And that's a lesson I learned the hard way. Is I bought this park in Peoria, and setup costs are 2.5 times what they are in Kansas. So capex has been huge compared to what I underwrote for, and so you either plan for that capex, or you just go slower and plan to do it a lot slower if you don't have the capital to do it. But that's it can eat up your cash very quickly in a hot state to do things, compared to other states like Kansas, where you just set up homes. The setter does most of the stuff. And the other thing I've learned after the first 3 parks is I was very aggressive on rent increases. And day one, I pretty much took over a park, sent a big increase, passed through all the utilities, and kind of hit hard day one. And I ended up losing a lot of tenants in the first 3 deals by doing that. And it started pretty much the wrong way. I mean, and everybody was they already hated us going in day one, even though we're cleaning up the park and making it better and spending a ton of capital to do it. They were blinded to it because we kind of went in and increased the rent first on this last deal. I'm not touching the rents. I'm just want to make sure everybody gets on board paying online. We're going to invest some money into the park and then send the rent increases and maybe go a little slower so we don't lose the cash flow on the tenants. Yeah, those have kind of been my tips from what I've learned in the last year and a half doing this, and the management system, which is key. I mean, just make sure that I will spend the money also day one, and it will make your life a lot easier.
Brett, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, just staying on top of the little things, like Larry said, like Larry's touching on, I think are huge. You don't want to let anything get behind a kid getting cut up. Sucks. So stay on top of that. I also think I mentioned in the beginning, consistency is something that we're really focusing on. And so when we have an announcement for one park, we try to blast it to all the parks, or if we have a learning, share with all the community managers. Financing options. We've got a few financing companies we're working with now. We've got Barron's, which is in a few states. We've got PEP, and we're working on 21st. And we try to make sure they're all available for all the parks. And we give them a handout of when to use which option for financing, because they're all a little bit different. So just getting that consistency and making sure that there's sort of this living trail for people to find the resources they need, I think have been the most helpful for us. Again, we're still working on it and figuring it out, but those are huge.
Going back to seeing patterns, the one word I wrote down was consistency, Brett. So right on.
Nice.
Yeah, that being consistent with your operations. And one thing, as far as growing in general, and this is not necessarily about operations, but what I've done is my focus has been on buying parks. I don't do a whole lot of infill unless, low hanging fruit like organic move-ins or posting ads once a week on Facebook for people advertising green homes in, because the way I look at it is there's a window of opportunity to purchase parks that's closing. I can always go back and fill those lots, but I can't necessarily go back and buy these parks. So that's one thing. And we've grown pretty quick, pretty fast. So we've just, it's definitely playing catch up, like Larry said, trying to go back and then get all the people we probably should have had from the beginning. But, I would say don't stop marketing. If you already own a couple parks, keep doing it. A couple times I was tempted to turn it off because we have cold callers, and then I may follow up with the people if there's a lead. And a few times I was tempted to, let's pause it for a while. We've got all these projects going on, but every time I thought about that and didn't do it, next week I might get a great lead, and then we ended up buying a property. So that would be my, I guess, number one thing right now is I recommend if you're wanting to get big and get a lot of parks, just keep going, because there is a window of opportunity that's closing.
Good point. Good points, Abraham. I'd say, sometimes I'm all about too growth and find the next deal. But one thing, kind of echoing some of Larry's concerns or comments, is, don't go too fast. I think kind of measure twice, cut once. I know I see it all the time. I mean, I get called almost every day. Somebody saying, "Hey, I missed this due diligence thing. Hey, I didn't do this right. How can you help?" And sometimes I can't help today. If you'd called me a month ago, I maybe could have helped. It's too late. You're going too fast. You got out over your skis. So that'd be one piece of advice, is just don't go too fast. And the other piece of advice would be, as we kind of talked about here too, there's an expense to it, but hire early. I know Brett had to, based on having a job and based on being remote. I kind of jokingly say now, Noah from the Bible, Noah didn't build the ark when it started raining. He built it in anticipation of the flood. And that's kind of how I've started looking at hiring people is, I think I'm going to need another regional manager in a year. I'll start looking now. And I don't have to hire but if the right person's there, what's the total cost of that? If the total cost is 60,000 or 80,000, there's a number to that. But if I had that person here now instead of a year from now, could that person help me or a manager or somebody else add 80,000 of value? And every time I ask that question, the answer is, I think so. So I hire one more, and I hire one more. We've hired over 10 people this year, And every one of them, we had to turn over a couple of people, didn't work out the right spot, but every position's been like, wow, that position's already paying for itself. So I can afford to hire one more. And that person was now free. Sometimes the person, my manager that took me on and relocated, he's already paid for himself for the next decade. So like, it's hard to find a star like that, but if you can, it's kind of like missing out a great deal. You're gonna be kicking yourself if you don't get the right team. So.
Ferd, I couldn't agree more, and I'll just chime in here a little bit. I think early on, it's really easy to skimp not only on software, but also on team. And you obviously can't go out day one and hire a full-time employee, but there's other team members that we hire like lawyers, and this is not a shameless plug for you, but truly, I look at the attorneys that I work with as an extension of my team. So just really recently during due diligence, I had Jonathan Gilmore, I think is his last name, working on due diligence for me on one of my parks. And it's really easy for me to think, oh, I don't need a zoning letter, or, oh, I don't need this full ALTA survey because it's going to cost $5,000 or $6,000, or that's going to be 4 hours of Jonathan's time that I'm being billed for. But we recently found one that it actually had the wrong zoning. And so we could have gone into a heavy infill park or project and not able to infill it. So we were able to backpedal, get an extra 3 months on due diligence to go through the rezoning process on that. So we're still in due diligence, but that was a huge save and totally worth it. And I look at that like I've got another employee that I'm only paying when I need, and it's a super skilled employee. So think of that with a lot of different external team members that help us out.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you saying that. I'll make sure to tell Jonathan too. He's in the next office. Maybe he's listening. He better still be over there billing. That's the benefit of outside counsel. I always just say, how can lawyers charge them? It's like, well, because you can't afford to have them full time, and you don't need them full time, but you want them to have expertise that you can plug in an hour or 2 or 3 at a time. Same thing with the plumber or any independent contractor. And it's like, I don't want to have a licensed plumber full time. I don't need him, but if you get a good one, it's worth what you pay for. So I appreciate,
right.
Please appreciate being part of your team and all that you guys do with us.
Yeah, I think also I'll say the same is I've worked with Ferd in my last 3 deals, and you've been a great part of the team, and that's also been very helpful to have somebody that not only is an attorney, but you have parts and you know how to run him, and you know what the legal issues are, and that's very helpful as you're doing your due diligence and closing on a deal.
I'm gonna concur as well. First, honestly, for when I heard about your service, I was like, do I really need an attorney to get me a zoning letter? I've gotten a bunch myself, and I would get one down like, man, it needs something else. And I call you up and you get like a much better one. So for every deal going forward, I'm going to be calling you to get the zoning letter.
You guys are making me blush. I appreciate it. Zoning is a complicated issue, but it's kind of fun to work on, and sometimes doesn't work perfect by any means, but it's saved me 7 figures getting the right zoning on a couple deals, and you don't know until you know. We just had a client where he had a gas and oil easement, and you cannot buy this deal because it's a surface easement and you can't put trailers there, and your business plan's infill. It's like, I never would have thought of that. Well, that's why you look at the title work. That's why you look at the survey. That's why you look at the zoning. And that's, and if you don't have the skills or the time to do it, that's why you outsource it, right? I outsource stuff all the time. People better than me at a lot of different stuff. So really appreciate this, guys. Till next time, thanks and God bless.
God bless you.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neimann. Ready to learn more? Go to www.themobilehomelawyer.com for free resources and materials to help you succeed. If you love the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us your review, and subscribe today. Thank you for listening. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.